Good morning, everyone. Today is the 23rd of December. There's a very interesting word in the Bible that might be shocking to you to know how often it's used, and that is the word perceived. Perceived. Having to do with our perceptions, right? That word is used 35 times. I want to talk about that a little bit. You know, there's a saying going around in psychological circles, perception is reality. Well, that's basically what's going on with all the misinformation out there on the social media platforms about different individuals. You know, perception is not always reality. Because there's a lot of misperception in the world. You say, well, all you have to do is look at the facts. Facts are very fictitious at times. Facts can be created with the slant that gives misinformation. Luke 20, verse 23 says, He perceived their craftiness and said unto them, Why tempt ye me? There's a lot of crafty people in the world. I'm having to deal with some of that craftiness right now. Misperceptions about things. Matthew 22:18, But Jesus perceived their wickedness and said, Why tempt ye me, ye hypocrites? People can make a lot of allegations about people. Sometimes people always assume the worst about somebody when it's just not the case. Well, sometimes our perceptions are correct. Matthew 21:45, when the chief priests and Pharisees heard his parables, they perceived that he spoke of them. They perceived correctly, didn't they? And also, Christ, Mark 2:8, and immediately when Jesus perceived in his spirit that they so reasoned within themselves, he said to them, Why reason ye these things in your hearts? My dad used to say, there are three sides to every story. There's a side that I'll tell, there's a side that you'll tell, and there's a side that neither one of us will tell. There's a certain amount of truth in that, don't we? Isn't there? It's called self-protection, right? Well, Ecclesiastes 2:14, the wise man's eyes are in his head, but the fool walketh in darkness, and I myself perceived also that one event happened to them all. Solomon said in Ecclesiastes 1:17, I gave my heart to know wisdom and to know madness and folly, and I perceived that this also is vexation of spirit. You say, well, Larry, why are you talking about this? Well, because there's a lot of people that make allegations about someone that are just not true. They're just not true at all. I'm sure there are a lot of people in prison today that are there because of false allegations against them. Paul had a lot of false allegations brought against him. He was put in prison. Paul went through a lot of suffering because of false allegations, false witnesses brought against him. Christ had false witnesses brought against him. Well, how do we know how to properly discern things? Well, we can seek God's face, that's one thing. And we also have to affirm that we're not perfect ourselves. We're far, far from perfect. You know, there's a lot of people who want to present themselves as perfect. There's no perfect man on the earth. I've made a lot of mistakes in my life. I'm far, far from perfection. I'm not looking for perfection. I'm looking for mercy. Right? Acts 23:6, when Paul perceived that one part were Sadducees and the others Pharisees, he cried out in the council, men and brethren, I'm a Pharisee, the son of a Pharisee, the hope of the resurrection of the dead, I am called in question. You know, now when Paul said he was a Pharisee, he was once a Pharisee, was brought up under Gamaliel, but he no longer subscribed to everything the Pharisees subscribed to because he came against the Pharisees as well. That's called perception. Isaiah 64:4, for since the beginning of the world men have not heard nor perceived by the ear, neither hath the eye seen, O God, beside thee, what he hath prepared for them that waiteth for him. But there are a lot of people out there that want to lay false charges against God's people, and they want to make their life miserable. And some people are pretty good at making other people's lives miserable, aren't they? You know, some other people want to try to make decisions for you based on what they want, not based upon what is good for everyone, but what's good for them. Well, you know, only we can have right perception by going to God and His Word. The Holy Spirit is the only one that can give us the right perception. Let us always remember that this morning. May the good Lord be with you in a special way is my prayer. God bless.